I'm Chris Hansen, right now on Crime Watch Daily from here in New York. A baby doctor drunk in the delivery room?
Did you smell any alcohol?
Definitely.
Shocking video of a woman deep in labor as the OB brags she just came straight from the bar.
Push. Well, look what time it is.
And he's not done.
If anyone gets anything to drink, it'll be me.
What he delivers next is truly outrageous.
What was your reaction when the doctor said to your daughter,
I was told not to say lift your fat ass up.
Crime Watch Daily's Anna Garcia on the case of a DUI, delivery under the influence.
you're talking about drinking before delivering a baby?
You're in my way, please.
Plus, he went from a freckled-faced kid to a rich and powerful drug kingpin.
$500,000 a week, $2 million a month.
Inside the new documentary about the legend known as White Boy Rick, taking me back to my hometown as a young reporter.
A tussle started.
He was a kid, but he was living the life.
Right now,
Andrea Eisenser with Crime Watch Daily.
Jason Matera with Crime Watch Daily.
this
I'm Elizabeth. I'm here with Crime Watch.
I'm Michelle from Crime Watch Daily.
Anna Garcia from Crime Watch.
is Crime Watch Daily.
Stay off my property.
We'll find you again. We always do.
Welcome to Crime Watch Daily, everyone. I'm Chris Hansen. First up today, a caught-on-video moment that will leave you shaking your head. It involves a doctor making some pretty scary comments just minutes before delivering a baby. Anna Garcia is in Las Vegas with the almost unbelievable story.
Chris, it's one of the most stressful moments in anyone's life. Those minutes before a baby is born. Not exactly the time you want to hear your doctor joking about just having come back from a bar. He's the baby doctor who was delivering punchlines in the delivery room.
I was told not to say lift your fat ass up.
Caught on video, allegedly drunk, as a woman gives birth. Heard saying he's come to the hospital straight from the bar.
Push. Well, look what time it is.
And now he's about to get a sobering wake-up call from me.
Can we talk to you about that video where you're talking about drinking before delivering a baby?
The Sims family could not have been happier about the news. A baby boy was on the way.
We were mainly excited because it's the first boy in the family.
So when I found out I was having a grandson, I was just filled with joy.
Alexandria Sims, who works as a preschool teacher, was expecting her second child, Jared.
I was just expecting to deliver a healthy baby. Jared was healthy the whole time I was pregnant.
So when it was time for baby Jared to enter the world, the family gathered in the delivery room at Sunrise Hospital and Medical Center in Las Vegas.
Once the contractions started, I just kind of zoned out from everything.
The Sims family videotaped this delivery as they had for all their babies.
All right, let's go. We're pushing.
All was going as expected for an induced labor. Mom's contractions were getting stronger, and she was pushing harder. It was time to call the doctor. Describe to me what happened when the doctor arrived.
I was a bit shocked because when he walked in, he kicked off his shoes and was in, I don't know, everyday wear, he had on shorts. He wasn't, I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, a doctor to be in scrubs and, put the gloves on. And
Alexandria's regular obstetrician was out of town.
Don't you wish Richter stayed in town this weekend now?
So the hospital's on-call doctor, Frank DeLee, would be the one delivering the baby. The first red flag? He'd be doing it barefoot.
I'm kind of like a germaphobe, so the whole barefoot thing, it really threw me off.
But something much stronger threw off Grandma.
I was behind the curtain when he initially came in the room. Then when he passed by, I was like, ooh, I smell alcohol.
Did you smell any alcohol?
Definitely on his breath, and you can smell it as he was talking.
While the family sized up the doctor sent by the hospital, Alexandria just concentrated on breathing and pushing. Do you even recall him joking about drinking?
No, I didn't hear any of that. I was just zoned out at that time.
With cell phone cameras rolling, the doctor and nurses start joking about Dr. DeLee's alleged drinking.
Push.
Push.
Well, look what time it is.
Been at happy hour since he left my C-section.
Suddenly, this hospital delivery room sounded more like a raunchy Vegas comedy act.
So where's happy hour?
Whatever, tell me about it.
Listen as Dr. DeLee tells the nurses he was at this bar when he got called in to deliver Jared. A call which may have upset the doctor because next we hear him where it sounds like complaining about wasting his drink.
Is Belvedere the chance to pour out?
No, tequila.
It's obvious from the video the mother is exhausted, so she asked the doctor for a sip of water. His response? Outrageous.
Can I have something to drink, please?
No.
Okay.
If anyone gets anything to drink, it'll be me.
And you haven't even heard the worst of it yet. About the last thing a woman in labor with her legs up in the air wants to hear from a man she just met is this.
I was told not to say lift your fat ass up.
What was your reaction when the doctor said to your daughter, move your fat ass?
Would you want somebody to talk to your family member, treat your daughter, your child like that? No.
The family admits they nervously laughed along and went with it because they say they were so uncomfortable with what was going down. Maybe we should switch this doctor? Maybe he's not the right person to be delivering this baby?
Honestly, everything was happening so fast. With him being the only on-call doctor, what do? Tell her close her legs and keep the baby in there? Like, just hold on.
I was having a baby. I couldn't just get up and walk.
We were just stuck in a rock and a hard place. We had to use the service in which the hospital rendered to us.
Mom wasn't the only one in the room holding her breath, hoping everything would be okay.
You gotta pray and hope for the best.
When Jared, their precious baby boy, finally arrived, something clearly wasn't right. When did you realize something was wrong?
When he initially got him out and held him and Jared's arm went limp.
Next, how the family video of Jared's birth goes from being a treasured memory to Exhibit A in a medical malpractice lawsuit. And I tracked down Dr. Frank DeLee in Las Vegas.
You talked about doing shots of tequila.
Imagine the shock when you're moments away from delivering a baby and the doctor walks in the room wearing Bermuda shorts and is barefoot. Making things even more troubling, he's joking about being at the bar. Anna Garcia is back now with more of our investigation into the caught on video incident.
Chris, was it a tasteless joke gone too far, or was it negligence? I flew here to Las Vegas to give Dr. Frank DeLee a chance to comment.
It just hurts me because... Sorry, guys. I've been through hell and back trying to just make sure my son is okay.
Alexandria Sims is suing Dr. Frank DeLee, the delivery room nurses, and Sunrise Hospital and Medical Center in Las Vegas for malpractice and negligence, claiming Dr. DeLee had been drinking right before he delivered her baby, Jared.
He was born with that birth injury out of negligence. You should have not been coming from no bar.
The family says this almost unbelievable cell phone video is all the evidence they need. Just listen to the nurses and doctor joking about Dr. DeLee's alleged drinking.
Push, push, push.
Happy hour?
Push.
Well, look what time it is.
Been at happy hour since he left my C-section. So, is Belvedere the chance to pour out? Is that what you're drinking?
No, tequila.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking in my head, like, oh my God, like he really just left the bar.
Dr. Frank DeLee, the nurses, and the hospital deny any wrongdoing and say in court records they acted according to their best judgment. Alexandria Sims claims her baby's shoulder apparently got stuck while coming out of the birth canal, causing Erb's palsy and shoulder dystocia.
The nerves in Jared's right side were stretched out when he was coming out of the birth canal from the way he was pulled.
And what did that cause?
It caused nerve damage in his right side. He has limited mobility, range of motion.
In court documents, Dr. DeLee, the doctor on call the afternoon of the delivery, says he provided emergency obstetrical care in good faith, and the injuries were caused by a pre-existing condition.
Jared was a healthy baby before he was born, and this is something that happens when the baby's coming out of the canal and how whoever's pulling the baby out handles the baby.
The Sims family attorney, Patricia Marr, says it was the doctor who caused the birth injury. And according to the Journal of Prenatal Medicine, this type of labor-related injury poses a huge risk to mother and baby.
He failed to perform certain maneuvers that were necessary to prevent such harm.
Marr and I went over the video frame by frame.
It was supposed to be a moment of celebration, and they wanted to record it so they could cherish the memories, and it turned out to be something much sadder.
Which leads her to one conclusion.
He was intoxicated during the delivery of the child.
If Dr. DeLee was drinking, he could be in big trouble. The Nevada state legislature has a law on the books that can lead to disciplinary action or denying a doctor's license. It states, inability to practice medicine with reasonable skill and safety because of illness, a mental or physical condition, or the use of alcohol, drugs, narcotics, or any other substance. So what do you think the nurses should have done?
They should have went to a supervisor or something.
It's obvious on the video that something is wrong with one of Jared's arms. You can see his arm is completely stretched out and stiff, unlike the rest of his body, which is curling from having just been in the womb.
You can see in one arm that is completely limp, like no movement whatsoever.
Though it's hard to hear over Jared's screams, you can make out Grandma saying in the delivery room, what's wrong with his arm? This medical condition has been life-altering for Jared, who is now a year and a half old.
Jared's been going to therapy since he was 3 weeks old. He has physical and occupational therapy.
The therapy has helped Jared regain some movement, but he will still need surgery, says his mother. DeLee and the hospital deny all the allegations and actually put the blame back on the mother, accusing her of negligence and carelessness because she failed to mitigate the damages in her own care for the infant and assumed risks involved in childbirth.
I'm not the one to blame. You're the one to blame because you were intoxicated delivering a baby.
Is it possible that he could have just been joking about drinking?
I don't believe that he was joking about drinking at all. You don't joke around like that, especially when you're delivering somebody's baby.
It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a joke. I clearly smell alcohol.
We wanted to hear from Dr. DeLee himself. We reached out to him through his attorney, but we never received a response. So I caught up with him outside his medical office in Las Vegas.
Good morning, Dr. DeLee. Anna Garcia from Crime Watch Daily. Can we talk to you about that video where you're talking about drinking before delivering a baby? You talked about doing shots of tequila, and the baby was born with a problem with its arm. Is there...
If you see the whole tape, you will see a different story.
I did see the whole tape, sir, and I didn't see a difference.
You're in my way, please.
We investigated Dr. DeLee further and discovered he's been sued at least twice for allegedly causing the exact same birth injury, shoulder dystocia, in babies he delivered.
You've been sued for delivering a baby that had a problem with its shoulder.
Both lawsuits were settled, one for more than $800,000. And there's more. A search of court records and the Nevada Medical Board reveals Dr. Frank DeLee has been sued at least 9 times for malpractice.
Is there anything more you can tell us, Dr. DeLee?
Sunrise Hospital wouldn't talk to us, but gave us this short statement. The care provided at Sunrise Hospital and Medical Center by our staff was appropriate. We will vigorously defend ourselves against these allegations.
Do you think anyone would have believed you if you didn't have the videotape?
No. Who would believe that a doctor would do that? They would think we were lying on the doctor.
As for Jared, his mother worries how he will manage.
I don't want my child to be bullied in school because of how he looks or how he carries his arm.
And she has a strong message to Dr. DeLee.
In your case, what would justice be?
For the doctor to take responsibility for what he did, for him to not practice anymore because he can't be out here drinking and delivering people's babies. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Come on, man.
I'm just Jared's voice.
In the lawsuit, the hospital claims the mother was told of the risks associated with childbirth, saying in part, the risks and consequences were fully explained, and the mother consented to such treatment and thereby assumed the risks. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think the doctor or the hospital should be held liable for what happened to little Jared? Sound off right now on our Facebook page. Coming up, he was a freckle-faced teen who infiltrated Detroit's most notorious drug gang. I was the first reporter to introduce the world to White Boy Rick.
When I broke that story, you can imagine that it got a lot of attention.
Now we take you inside the new documentary based on the crime legend with explosive new allegations.
Everyone knows who I am, but no one knows the real reason I'm in here.
That's next. Now to a real-life crime story that has Hollywood fighting for the rights. And it's a story that I broke while working as a young reporter in Michigan. It all starts with a young man named Rick Wershey Jr., or as he was known on the streets, White Boy Rick. Rolling in a limo. Beautiful women throwing themselves at you.
They had all the man toys that they wanted. Cars, planes, housing, weapons, and they had a party life.
Dripping in diamonds, draped in furs. With boatloads of money.
Money, money, money. We rich.
They would rent yachts just to put all the cash onto a yacht.
And white mountains of coke.
Once upon a time, drug dealers was truly idolized.
But this fairy tale is real. It could be called the Motor City Mafia.
We became rock stars. We started with $125, had days where I made $3 million.
And a major player in the urban center of Detroit, believe it or not, a 17-year-old mop top whom I helped introduce to the world.
And his nickname is White Boy Rick.
The teenage drug dealer nicknamed White Boy Rick.
You can imagine that it got a lot of attention.
His real name is Rick Wershey Jr. Kid Rock raps about him.
Got more cash than White Boy Rick.
And Hollywood is making a movie about the 17-year-old drug dealer that could star Matthew McConaughey. Had I not actually broken the story,
Wershey and a man named Roy Grissom were arrested, and in the back seat, officers found a large sum of money.
I don't know if I would even believe this story, but now I'm featured in a new documentary titled White Boy.
Everyone knows who I am, but no one knows the real reason I'm in here.
White Boy Rick has been sentenced to life in prison, and he says he's not behind bars for being a drug dealer. He's there for retribution.
You're not trying to tell me that you're an angel, that you never did anything wrong, are you?
I've been involved in wrongdoing, but I don't feel I did anything to receive a life sentence.
Is he really in there because he had drugs in the back of his car, or is he in there for taking down all these public officials?
While most high school freshmen were flipping burgers and worrying about taking their SATs, Rick Wershey Jr. was on the path to becoming a crime legend.
Rick grew up on the east side of Detroit, which is a notoriously very tough area.
The neighborhood was mostly black at this time. There was crack houses across the street from our house.
Rick's father and I divorced when Rick was 5, and they stayed with him, which I wasn't happy about, but they wanted to be there, so I left them.
Rick's dad, Rick Sr., was a struggling inventor who just happened to have an extremely dangerous side job.
He also had a business where he would illegally sell guns on the black market, help people get permits.
He even sold silencers. He could get you anything. He could get you grenades.
He was socializing and doing business with the biggest drug dealers in Detroit.
By the time Rick Jr. was 14 years old, he'd pretty much met every drug czar in the neighborhood.
But he knew just from being on his stoop and riding his bike in the neighborhood and interacting with people in the neighborhood who was who.
Little Rick was about to be peddling more than his bike. Before long, he began hanging out with Johnny Curry of the notorious Curry Brothers drug gang.
How does a 16 or 17-year-old kid, Richard Wershey Jr., how does he get connected to the Curry family? How did you know these people?
He was smart. I mean, he was grown up. Rick was cool. He was all right. He was a lot of fun.
Johnny Curry at that time was in his late 20s, early 30s, one of the biggest drug kingpins in the city, rolling around in his custom Mercedes with 14-year-old mop-top, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Rick, who looked like Leave It to Beaver. It was almost a novelty, and I think Johnny Curry liked it. He liked that Rick was a novelty.
At the time, Johnny Curry and his brother were making more money than they could spend.
$500,000 a week, $2 million a month.
Johnny Curry would buy him a mink coat. They'd walk around with their twin mink coats. To integrate like he did, I mean, that's not everyone can do that.
It was a lavish lifestyle Rick Jr. got addicted to. So when Curry offered the teenager a job selling coke, he took it.
We had started letting him do a little errands, and then he started knowing a few people that you figured you buy from the white boy, so the dope was good or whatever, you know. So he started doing his thing.
I went shopping. I bought stuff. I bought a car when I was 15 years old. Sweatsuits, jewelry, cars. Well, I was making more money than the adults that I knew.
I remember one time, back in those days, I had a 63 black Corvette convertible with red interior. And I'm driving it downtown. Who comes driving by? Rick Wershey and three of his friends. Hey, Chris, what's going on? Speed right off. He was enjoying the celebrity moment. He was a kid, and he was famous for all the wrong reasons, but he was living the life.
While most thought Rick was working for the Currys, the 14-year-old was hiding a secret that could get him killed.
Here's the truth. At the age of 14, I was recruited by the FBI to become an informant.
Up next, what happens when the stool pigeon gets caught?
We heard that he was telling. So they said, we got to kill that white boy.
And just wait till you hear who wants him dead.
Imagine my editors asking me, what have you got going today? I said, well, an alleged notorious 17-year-old drug dealer was caught in a raid sleeping with the niece of the mayor on a Friday afternoon.
Rick Wershey Jr. was not your stereotypical drug dealer, but the teen from Detroit managed to become a player in the multi-million-dollar cocaine underworld of Detroit. However, the one thing no one knew about White Boy Rick is that he says he was working for the feds. Rick Wershey Jr. was not your typical 14-year-old. He had a very unusual job, running drugs. And his boss was the FBI.
I had people try to kill me before. To be honest, you're a kid and you don't realize every day that you were playing with fire, that you could walk out your door one day and your life would be over.
Rick Wershey Jr., a.k.a. White Boy Rick, is believed to be the Bureau's youngest informant ever.
I think he earned nearly $40,000 in informant fees. He went out and he bought a car before he was old enough to drive.
Sean Reck is making a documentary titled White Boy about the kid who ratted out and punked the most dangerous drug lords and corrupt cops in the Motor City.
People wanted to cling to a story of this, the young boy almost raised by wolves in the ghetto.
It was a tough time in Detroit. I know. I broke the White Boy Rick story as a local crime reporter.
Were you ever a cocaine kingpin?
I was nowhere ever near a cocaine kingpin.
The FBI was trying to crack down on drug gangs in the city and corrupt cops.
There can be no progress in the suburbs unless there's progress in the city.
According to the documentary White Boy, some of Detroit's highest-ranking cops and relatives of Detroit Mayor Coleman Young were in bed with the biggest drug dealers on Detroit's dangerous east side.
Lots of members of federal law enforcement had a giant agenda to go get Coleman Young and try to tie parts of his administration into the Curry organization.
Biographer Scott Bernstein says it all centered around the mayor's niece, Kathy Volson Curry, Johnny Curry's wife.
She was addicted to cocaine, and she gravitated toward cocaine dealers.
And then she had heard about the Curry brothers and what we was into in our life, so we started dating. And then next thing you know, we was married.
They became very worried about Kathy, assigned a police detail to guard them. And that police detail basically was protecting a drug operation.
But before long, the FBI claims some members of the Detroit Police Department wanted in on the action.
There was actually large quantities of cocaine delivered in police cars to crack houses at times. They would also go out and raid other crack houses and bring the drugs to these guys for a fee.
One time I got picked up by one of the police officers. He knew I had something in the car. He seen it on the back seat. He said, go ahead on about your way. You know, you want me to escort you in or something like that?
And that's when White Boy Rick becomes an informant. So how did the FBI find this freckled-faced kid? Believe it or not, it was his dad, Rick Sr., who was already working as an informant, who offered his son up.
I showed up at a McDonald's, and he had this freckle-faced young kid with him. So I began questioning the father about his knowledge of the Curry drug gang organization.
My dad didn't really know who these people were.
And I noticed that when I talked to him, he would defer to the kid.
The use of a child as an informant was illegal. So technically they used the father, and they just used him as a straw man for Rick's information.
Before long, the FBI was paying big bucks for this kid, barely in high school, to cozy up to Johnny Curry and his posse of thugs.
He was out on school nights till 2 and 3 in the morning. His father apparently permitted this because there was money involved.
A lot of money. Rick's dad raked in more than 30 grand. Government documents also show he was getting paid while the FBI was sending his 14-year-old son into crack houses with wads of cash to make massive drug deals. White Boy Rick was in.
To integrate like he did, I mean, that's not everyone can do that.
They were really running Detroit. They were sort of rock stars.
But after a few suspicious FBI raids, Johnny Curry began to smell a rat.
None of this is confirmed, but I've had good sources tell me that Johnny Curry ordered Rick Wershey to be murdered.
I had nothing to do with his getting shot. If an agent said it or whoever said it, the police officer, whoever said it, they way out of order then.
One day after a drug run, Rick Jr. is shot in the stomach, allegedly by one of Curry's drug mules.
He was shot at close range with a .357 Magnum, went in the front, out the back, blew his large intestine in half.
It was a close call.
When he finally comes to, he has his dad on one side and the FBI on the other side. And they ask him what happened, and he says, Johnny Curry tried to kill me. And they said, no, that's not what happened. You were playing with a gun and you accidentally shot yourself.
Instead of pumping the brakes, the FBI sent White Boy Rick right back in, thinking being shot would actually up his street cred. And they were right.
From that point forward, Rick was in tighter than ever.
But the feds quickly realized Rick wasn't the only one who dodged a bullet.
The task force realized that if he died, the fact that they'd been using a 14-year-old kid to infiltrate drug gangs was going to come to the surface, and it would be a scandal of all scandals.
It was time to get Rick out and bring down the Currys as soon as possible. And they saw an opportunity. In, of all places, Las Vegas had a major prize fight. A guy by the name of Leon Lucas was supposed to get tickets for Johnny and his crew, but Leon dropped the ball.
There's no reservations and there's no fight tickets, and he is incredibly embarrassed.
When Curry arrives back in Detroit, he has a stern message delivered to Leon.
What those individuals that went there decided to do was to shoot the place up in a drive-by shooting.
Leon Lucas was not there, but his 13-year-old nephew Damian Lucas was. Damian was shot and killed.
And this becomes a very hot topic on the news. 13-year-old killed in drive-by. No charges have been filed since.
The documentary claims the Curry gang was responsible for the shooting, but no one had proof. That is until Rick Jr. says he overhears a phone call between Johnny Curry and one of Detroit's most famous detectives.
Inspector T, how you doing? Where the you been?
Gil Hill had become wildly popular as Eddie Murphy's tough-talking boss in the movie Beverly Hills Cop. But in real life, Hill was head of homicide for the Detroit Police Department.
He was a guy with quite a bit of cachet. He had his eyes set on the mayor's office himself.
And now, White Boy Rick says, without a doubt, Gil Hill helped cover up the murder of 13-year-old Damian Lucas.
Johnny placed a call to Gil, put it on speaker. We were riding around in Johnny's BMW. Basically, Gil told him not to worry about anything. They went down and met, and he said he gave Gil 10 grand to cover up the kid's murder.
With that kind of information, White Boy Rick once again had a bullseye on his back.
He wanted us to make sure that we kill White Boy Rick. Make sure that boy's dead. Exact word. We can't have him talking. This came from Gil Hill, mouth to me.
Up next, how an FBI informant ends up on the other side of the law.
One day, I get a tip that they're going to raid Kathy Volson Curry's townhouse. The feds go in there, and guess who's in bed with Kathy Volson Curry? Richard Worshey Jr.
And the backdoor deal that could have kept White Boy Rick in prison for the rest of his life.
There are murderers and rapists and much larger scale drug dealers who have been released. It turns out that he's nearly a political prisoner.
As a teenage drug dealer, Rick Worshey Jr. earned the nickname of White Boy Rick. Now, as an adult, he's earned the title of the longest-serving non-violent juvenile offender ever in the state of Michigan. And I think a lot of people, including me, are wondering, why is he still locked up? Rick Worshey Jr. basically grew up behind bars.
Being in prison the last 29 years is like being dead.
The mop-top kid, once known on the streets as White Boy Rick, is now a balding grandpa.
You see your kids grow up, but you have no part of anything.
Rick was just 14 years old when he was hired by the FBI to be an informant and run drugs for one of Detroit's most dangerous gangs, the Curry Brothers. He did double duty spying on dirty cops. By the time he was 17, White Boy Rick landed on the wrong side of the law.
Why would juvenile, nonviolent drug offender be kept in prison beyond 29 years?
Now, a documentary about the famous teen snitch is making explosive allegations, saying it may have been drugs that put him behind bars, but Rick claims it's dirty cops who are keeping him here.
It's important to us to show this to the rest of the country and for people to put this back into perspective of what really happened to an American citizen.
Things all started to turn for the FBI's Golden Boy with an alleged murder cover-up involving Detroit's most famous homicide detective.
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
Gil Hill played a good cop alongside Eddie Murphy in the movie Beverly Hills Cop. But Detroit's drug underworld says he was a bad cop in real life.
Was Gil Hill affiliated with the drug world? Affiliated? Yeah. Yeah, he was affiliated.
According to the documentary, Rick Jr. heard Johnny Curry offer Hill $10,000 to cover up the murder of a 13-year-old boy, one of his gang members.
And Gil Hill was investigated for his role in taking a possible payoff and possibly burying these charges. He was never charged.
Confessed and convicted hitman Nathaniel Kraft says when Gil realized it was White Boy Rick who tattled on him to the FBI, Hill gave Kraft the order. Take the kid out.
What's the most you were offered to kill White Boy Rick? The most was $125,000, and that was through Gil.
Kraft admits he tried to follow orders, but White Boy Rick got lucky.
That's the only reason why he was still alive, that Mac jammed on us.
That scare was enough to pull White Boy Rick off the streets, but he already gave them enough ammunition to take the Curry brothers out.
I got a 20-year sentence, I did 14, came out.
The FBI thought Rick Jr. would simply go back to high school and get a real job, but he wasn't about to start flipping burgers.
I became addicted to the lifestyle. I became addicted to the money. I became addicted to the women. I became addicted to that life.
With the Currys out of the way, Rick Jr. at just 17 was the new drug kingpin in Detroit, raking in about 30 grand a month.
I don't think we're talking about hundreds of kilos, which these other guys were moving, but tens of kilos.
But the documentary shows the FBI had new targets.
The FBI wanted to use my relationship with Kathy to target the mayor as well as police corruption within the city of Detroit.
One day, I get a tip that they're going to raid Kathy Volson Curry's townhouse. The feds go in there, and guess who's in there, in bed with Kathy Volson Curry? Richard Worshey Jr.
What happened next, Rick says, was clearly a setup by the mayor and Detective Hill to get him off the streets and keep him quiet.
Rick Worshey and a man named Roy Grissom were arrested driving down Hampshire near Dickerson.
They said, "You're under arrest." And he said, "For what?" And they said, "Possession of drugs." And he told them, "I don't have any drugs." And they said, "They're in the car." He said, "Search it."
One of the police officers reaches into the back of the car and pulls out the bag with the cash.
Investigators say that Worshey took off running.
About a half an hour later, cops find White Boy Rick. And a few blocks away, Rick claims they set him up for a big fall.
Later, more police arrived, and eventually they found a box containing 8 kilos of cocaine.
That added up to 650 grams of coke. At the time, that's exactly how much cops needed to put Rick away for life.
Where did the drugs come from? No one knows. My fingerprints weren't on the drugs. My palm prints weren't on it.
He was convicted, and after that, it was easy. You go into jail, you're never going to see the light of day.
Or would he? The FBI, which helped create White Boy Rick, was about to come to his rescue.
He said, "Well, the FBI is here, and they want me to help them."
The code name for the FBI's elaborate undercover sting was Operation Backbone.
The objective was to get these corrupt cops.
According to the documentary, Rick agreed to help the FBI set up politicians and the police. The FBI says Hill and the mayor bailed.
I introduced Mike Castro, who was the undercover FBI agent, to Kathy. He posed as my supplier from Miami.
Kathy was just enamored with the prospect of getting back into the cocaine business and so forth. Her eyes lit up. And at that point, she offered her police assistance. 18 corrupt police officers and politicians, as a result of Worshey's direct involvement in this thing, went to prison. And without White Boy Rick, that never would have happened.
And they haven't even scratched the surface. The corruption runs so deep in there, it's a shame, man.
Shortly after Operation Backbone, the FBI kept its word and testified on Rick's behalf. In fact, the 650 lifer law that White Boy Rick was convicted under was actually repealed.
The Supreme Court of the state of Michigan said that constitutes cruel and unusual punishment, so you can't sentence people to life without parole for a nonviolent crime.
From a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10. I say he was about a 2. Rick was nowhere near me.
So why is White Boy Rick still in prison?
I think it goes back to Gil Hill. All roads lead back to him. I mean, there's someone or something that's keeping me in prison, and it's not the crime that I committed.
Although Mayor Coleman Young and Detective Gil Hill have since passed away, Rick says there are loyalists to the old regime who are worried the past sins of the city will be revealed.
I think helping the FBI with Operation Backbone was the biggest mistake of my life because it created enemies that I couldn't even imagine. I was a kid. I didn't think of the political aspects of it.
The filmmaker of White Boy also made a documentary titled Murder in the Park. That one helped free a man who was wrongly convicted and imprisoned for 15 years. Now, Sean Reck is hoping this documentary will expose what he calls another injustice and set Rick free.
What happens if 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years down the road, Rick, you get out of prison? What do you do then?
Start my life over. I want to go home, be able to raise my kids, have a family, get a job somewhere, man, lead a normal life.